Afternoon YouTube, Sidekick here. I'm in my trusty AV-8B Harrier, but the scene may look a little out of place because I'm actually in the location where you usually will find me in my trusty A4 Skyhawk. That's because we're doing a bit of a special project this afternoon. We're going to take a look at a number of different ways of using iron bombs. From the dawn of military flight until the early 1990s, iron bombs were, well, just bombs. There really were no precision-guided munitions, so a bomb was a thing that you dropped from an airplane, and it found its way to the target with only gravity to guide it. As soon as it left the airplane, it was either destined to hit the target or to miss it. Over those 70 years of dropping bombs, many different techniques were developed, from the early days of simply leaning out of the cockpit and dropping the bomb, to the highly sophisticated optomechanical bomb sights that were used to drop bombs from 25,000 feet or more. Today we're going to look at techniques for dropping bombs from fast-moving single-engine aircraft. These are basically the techniques that were developed to turn fighters into fast bombers during World War II, and which were bequeathed to those airplane successors, the fast attack jets of the post-war era. If you have watched my videos, you have seen me dropping bombs from the A4 Skyhawk using iron bombs and an iron sight, essentially using some basic variation that fighter pilots developed and perfected during World War II. In fact, you've seen me flying this very mission in the Skyhawk and dropping bombs on a couple of bridges. So we're going to go back and look at that technique. But by the late 1960s, avionics technology had progressed to the point where the static reflection sight could be replaced by a moving display on a heads-up display that provided computer assistance to the aiming process. And to demonstrate those techniques, we're going to fly that same mission in the Harrier and attack those same bridges using different computer-assisted aiming techniques. But before we do that, let's go quickly back to the A4 here and take a look at how we would do this bombing run with a simple reflection, an iron sight. So we're going to be looking for a bridge that's going to be off to our left. We made the approach at low altitude. Now we're going to pop up, gain some altitude, and we think we're almost up to the kind of altitude we want to do the dive bombing attack from, around 8,000 feet. We're going to roll over. We're going to pick up our target. There it is there. And we're going to start our run. And the process here is we need to try and figure out how to get the pipper over the target at the right altitude, at the right angle of dive, and at the right speed. And it's a little bit of an art form. But if we do it right, we'll put our bombs on that reasonably small target of that bridge. And you basically, at least I do this almost by feel. When I think it looks about right, I roll right in and then start the process of smoothly rolling out to try and get the pipper moving up to the target at a rate where, when I'm at about the right altitude, I can release the bombs. And you see what kind of results we got. Okay, so in this mission, we're going to go around and take a shot at another bridge. It's a slightly more challenging target, A, because it's in the forest, and B, because it's the way it's angled. You'll see what I mean. But we're going to do the bomb run again. So get down low. Get back around our little ridge line here that we're going to pop up over. And we're basically going to repeat the same kind of attack. Now, when we do this with the Harrier, the difference is going to be, instead of just having the single iron sight there that displays in the same place in our head-up display all the time, we'll have a moving display that shows where the bomb is expected to land, and that will allow us to be a little bit more precise. And as you'll see, it will also give us some different options for how we deliver the bombs, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So we're lining up to start our second run here. So, as before, we get behind the ridge, and then we pop up, increase the maximum throttle, and pull her back. And again, we go up to somewhere close to 8,000 feet. We're going to roll over to level out. So we're pulling positive G's to level out. It also gives us a chance to look at the target area. So this time we're looking for the bridge that's kind of across that U from the bridge we hit last time. As you can see, it's in the trees. It's also angled away from us, so we're going to have to fly around it a little if we want to deliver the bombs along the length of the bridge. So we're going to go around a little bit. And again, this is a lot of the art form to me is trying to get the target in the right location on the aircraft so you can start your run well. And that's partly what makes this a bit more of a challenge. Okay, that looks about right, so we're rolling in. And we're a little bit shallow this time. Not quite as steep as the last time. That's going to affect the bomb drop. Also having a harder time getting it lined up. Get it lined up. And the pickle was a little bit late. And as you can see, we actually missed that one long, partly because of the angle of the dive and partly because of where I pressed the release. So those are exactly the kind of issues that the computer-assisted bombing modes in the Harrier were designed to overcome. So let's get back in the Harrier and see how we do it from there. So here we are in the Harrier, performing essentially the same approach to pop up, but you can see that our HUD looks quite different. Instead of the static iron sight, we have the air-to-ground display of the Harrier showing what's called continuous computed impact point. You'll notice when we switch back to it, you'll see that there's a cross at the bottom of a line. That cross is where the bomb is going to hit. So instead of trying to arrange ourselves to be in exactly the right dive angle and speed at the right time, what we have to do is try and get the cross over the target. It's actually a much simpler system. So you see we're doing essentially the same attack profile. We popped up, we rolled over, we find the target. But now what we want to do is essentially arrange ourselves so that we can bring that cross, that CCIP pipper, up to the target. And once it's on the target, we can press the release at any time. And there it is. And there you see the results. Good hits in the middle of the target. So one thing that you may also have noticed is that we only dropped 2 bombs that time as opposed to 4 that we dropped with the Skyhawk, because with the computer-assisted bombing, we can be a little bit more certain of our aiming point. We don't have to use as many bombs to try and bracket the target. So, and as you can see, the other thing that CCIP gives us, it's really essentially the same attack technique, but because we know where the bombs are going to land, we don't have to spend as much time getting the target in exactly the right place when we do the roll-in. So it gives us a bit more flexibility in the way that we attack. And you'll see that particularly this time as we're going after that bridge that's kind of at the odd angle. We don't have to spend as much time flying around the target to get the right line on it. Alright, so we're getting ready to start the second run. We're just giving ourselves lots of room to make a nice smooth entry here. Go back to air-ground mode and get the CCIP pipper. The symbology is that when you see that bar, it means that the actual release point is off screen, so you can't use the cross at that point. The bar has to be absent in order for the cross to actually be the impact point of the bomb on the screen. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about toss bombing. Okay, so we're climbing back up. Once again, we're looking for that other bridge that's across the sort of oxbow there from the bridge that we just hit. It's in the trees. It's a little bit tougher target. And crucially, it's aimed to back away from us. So we're still going to go around a little bit to try and come down on the bridge, but we're a lot less sensitive to that using the CCIP than we were trying to do that in the Skyhawk with the iron sight. Alright, that looks about right, so we're rolling in. And pull around and get it a bit lined up. went a little bit too far. So you see, I have messed up the approach a little bit, but the difference is with CCIP, I'm going to be able to recover that a lot more easily than if I was flying with the iron sight. So I'm even dropping those bombs with my wings not completely level, which would be a real no-no with the iron sight, but still with CCIP we managed to put the bombs on the target. Okay, so let's go back and start the run again, but this time we're going to use a different aiming technique. This time we're going to use something called continuously computed release point, or in the Harrier it's just referred to as auto mode. In this method, we're not actually going to release the bombs ourselves. The computer's going to do it for us based on knowing where the bombs are going to land. So all we're going to do is press the pickle to enable the release, and then the computer will select the time to actually do the release. Now you'll notice that we approach this from a slightly different angle. With CCRP, we want to leave ourselves a little bit more room to identify the target, but the other thing is, because we're going to be able to use the ARBS system in the Harrier, we have an enhanced optical sight that will let us also spot the target from a little bit farther away, so there isn't any need to be as close to the target when we start the run. So we're using essentially the same profile. We popped up, but you'll notice we don't have to use quite as dramatic or aggressive pop-up. We can throttle back. Now we're going to get ourselves pointed at the target, and we're going to switch on ARBS, and we're going to see where the bombs are actually intended to land. Now, one thing about ARBS is it's going to use the ground beneath the bridge, so we're actually going to move the aiming point a little bit, so we're actually aiming at something closer to the bridge. Now all we do is get ourselves lined up on a line. We need to keep that vertical line. We need to keep our flight path on that vertical line, and the system will count down how long we have until the bombs drop. The little bar appears when it's getting close, and then all we're going to have to do is press the release and wait for the airplane to release the bombs. And then we pull off and look back, and presto, bombs in the middle of the target. So as you can see, some of the advantages of CCRP over even CCIP is that it is a much more measured approach. Gives you a lot more time to get yourself set up. Make sure you've got the approach correct, and in fact it eliminates the timing problem because you don't have to press the button at the right time. The computer does that for you. Now, 15 seconds. There are people that will maintain that CCRP is meant to be a level bombing mode, so you're not supposed to dive at the target as we just did. And you will hear complaints from people that makes CCRP kind of finicky, that if you don't fly the approach exactly right, then you don't have good results with accuracy. I don't think it's necessary to use CCRP that way. I think you can, but I don't even necessarily think that was what it was designed to do. If you read accounts of, for instance, the first Gulf War, Desert Storm, Harrier pilots certainly used the auto mode in dive bombing mode to improve the accuracy of their dive bombing and to allow them to approach from a higher height. And I think that's a valid way of using CCRP. And in fact, we'll see that as we pop up here, and we're going to go after that second bridge that is a more challenging target, and we'll see that CCRP will actually take a lot of the challenge out of it. So once again, we're popping up. We're looking for the general target area. Again, we're going to use the ARB system to give us a nice close-up view of the target, so we won't have to be eyeballing it quite as much as we were in either the Skyhawk or in CCIP mode. And again, we'll go around the target a little bit more, but again, because we now have a very precise way of dropping the bombs, we're going to be a lot less sensitive to needing to come down along the axis of the bridge in order to make sure that we're accurate. And once again, we're only dropping 2 bombs. So we pull around until we get the nose pointed at the target, at which point we should be able to get it on screen. We're going to move the impact point up to right at the beginning of the bridge so we know we're actually going to hit the bridge. And then it's just a matter of getting ourselves on that line. We can do that slowly in a measured way, get it smooth We'll slow down a little here, although we're going quite a bit faster than we were in either of the other runs. And again, we just hold the pickle and the bombs are gone. And we're also dropping, you'll notice, at a much higher altitude than we were in the other two cases, and we hit the bridge dead on. And, you know, basically it's a much more measured approach, and I would say a much more high probability approach using CCRP than either the iron bomb sight or the CCIP. Okay, that's about going to do it for today. We're just going to cruise around and look at our handiwork. There's still a couple of more advanced computer-assisted bombing techniques that I want to talk about. We're going to do that in a second video. In that video, we're going to talk about using CCIP to do something called dive toss bombing. Then we're going to use the CCRP mode to do something called loft bombing. And these will be techniques that will use the computer-assisted modes to actually help us get a little bit more standoff from the target, which is something that started to become a lot more important in the late 1960s and 70s as enemy air defenses started getting a lot more sophisticated, and it's eventually the thing that led the drive to developing the kinds of precision guided and standoff munitions that are a lot more common today. But that'll be the topic for another video. So in the meantime, please subscribe and like this video, and make sure you tune in for the next one. And for now, this is Sidekick, signing off.